Hello and thanks for watching the video. We are going to talk about the CVEC pipes and the prototypes that I was working on right as we closed CVEC. This is a 10 scale touring car torque pipe that was used mostly in like parking lot races, which there's a lot more parking lot races than there are paved racetracks. But this is a second generation of our torque pipe. First generations, we had stinger issues. When the car would come and hit the pipes or hit another car violently, a lot of times the stingers were coming loose. It actually would pull the threads out, making the pipe kind of worthless. I know a lot of people were JB welding the stingers and doing whatever they could to mount the stingers back on. So to solve that issue, one of the things that I had done was we increased the material right around this part of the pipe only, because weight is an issue, to where we picked up between 1/4 and 1/2 of thread. That was enough to where it made this pretty much permanent. And that solved our stinger issues. One of the other problems that we had with the pipe was, as the demand increased with this style of pipe, the time it took to produce the pipe was more than we wanted. Basically because once the CNCs went in and did this half of the pipe, we did the stinger holes, threaded them, got them ready. Depending on which the application would vary the stinger size. We do our engraving depending on, again, which orientation. This particular pipe has the CVEC name on both sides, so it could have been a right hand exhaust or a left hand exhaust. That wasn't something we were going to normally do. This was just a test run on this particular pipe. But the pipe was time consuming to build, because once this part of the pipe was done, you would take this part of the pipe that was blank and you would have to thread it together, mark the orientation where the stinger is or the pressure fitting is going to go, and then I'd have to take this back off, and then we'd put it into the CNC machine, making sure we don't cross these with the other 190 pipes we would build at a time. And then I'd have to go ahead and drill and tap this, and then we'd go ahead and put the pressure fitting in it, and then you can go ahead and put the pipe together. And it wasn't that much longer than our prototype pipe that I'll show you in a moment, but it was enough to where the prototype pipe would have cost probably, roughly, we're estimating $10 a pipe less. So the other problem with this pipe was, if you did break this, let's just say some of these people were jumping houses or school buses or Penske trucks or whatever, sometimes they could break the pipe. Well, we really couldn't offer the services of you sending the pipe in for us to fix it. It was just too time consuming to stop the CNCs that were trying to produce our orders. So customer would be out the $60 to $110 for an exhaust if they broke it. And I felt bad for the consumers in that regards, even though I'd rather sell a new pipe. But I figured it'd be nice if we could be so different than everybody else to be able to offer a repair, or you could go and buy a exhaust that one pipe fits every need, whether it be a short track for torque like this, or you have a mid-range track, or a giant track like Kissimmee. So during our brainstorming meetings with a few people, we said it would be so cool to be able to offer our pipe in a, say, wooden box that offered the torque, a mid-range, and an RPM, and call it something special, a signature series or whatever. But this pipe just wasn't going to do it. This pipe is held together by its divergent cone, or the baffle here. That's what we just call it, because so many people that aren't in the industry worked for us, so we just call it a baffle. This piece, you could not remove it from this pipe. And if you wanted to change these holes, a lot of our early generations, we didn't allow the air to escape through this part of the cone here. And some of our cones, we made them longer. We were testing the different theories, looking at, say, Nova Rossi pipes or RD Logics or any of those guys. We were trying to see what would help us increase our performance. So you couldn't change this part of this pipe. This is what you got, and that's all you got. So we worked on the prototype pipe here. This pipe here, we went ahead and created, and we ran this pipe at the 2006 Florida Winter Nationals in Fort Myers, Florida. And we were really surprised of how well this pipe performed. Some of the improvements on this pipe is, again, we ran more material, the same as this pipe, for the stinger. But as you can see, we also notched our stingers now, because now you could take a wrench and put it on there and actually give it an extra turn, where the old stingers, you'd have to use a pair of pliers and had a chance of marking the stingers. We wanted to try to make sure we had a really good looking pipe. We shortened the mounting to allow clearance on the wheels. We moved the pressure fitting from the back half to the front half of the pipe, lengthening the front half of the pipe. What that allows us to do is now the CNCs can produce this whole part, the engraving, the stinger, the pressure fitting, all at once. No taking it out and measuring and doing all kinds of stuff with a Sharpie. It's all programmed at once. Now the back half of the pipe, you could change. You can put any kind you want. You can be a short one for torque. This is a mid-range, or a longer for RPMs. But you can also change the baffle inside, or remove it altogether. So this baffle inside here is just pressed in by the back half of the pipe. So there's a little lip inside there, and this O-ring here will go up and press right up against that. These holes here are just for orientation for the pressure fitting. So you would have to line that up. It didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be somewhere as long as you could see the hole of the pressure fitting. And then you just thread the back half of the pipe together. And since our mountings on all of our pipes have the holes for the little springs to hold the header on, it didn't matter the orientation of the back half of the pipe. So this allows us to produce the pipe quicker than this pipe, the old pipes, but it also allows the customer to change any part of it that they need it to. So say you bought a mid-range pipe, this pipe, at your local hobby shop, and say it was $90 or $100, whatever it was. I forget what our suggested retail was going to be on this. It was going to be less than the old pipe. But now customer says, oh man, I'm going to be running at a parking lot in next month. I really want to be able to run a torque pipe. Well, instead of buying the whole thing, now they can just buy a torque tube right here, and it'd be a fraction of the price. So now the customer could change from mid-range to a torque or to an RPM. And one of the marketing things that we were looking at was offering it as a signature series. As a signature series pipe, you would have gotten, say you wanted the mid-range, but you would also get the torque and an RPM in the same box, but you would get your engraving on it, whatever you would want. So you could get your name engraved on it, or a hobby shop, or a racetrack. That was going to be our CVEC signature series. Unfortunately, CVEC, we were forced to close, and then the economy ended up tanking, so we I put this in a drawer and said someday. And so now we're kind of looking at that someday could be now. I know electric cars have really taken off and taken over, but I still see a market for nitro. So this pipe would have been working on the Jado from Traxxas, the Traxxas Revo, the Traxxas T-Max, which we offered a rear exhaust for, but we would have changed the orientation of this and had it off of the right side of the T-Max. And there's a lot of other vehicles that we were aiming for this pipe to take off with. Unfortunately, we just never got there. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it kind of explains a little bit on what we were working on as we closed CVEC, and where my time was spent. Between the orders that were coming in, I pretty much put my racing aside and ended up sponsoring multiple drivers, and we had a couple really great drivers running this prototype, and they really loved the pipe, said it was very, very good, and they knew that if they did crash, the pipe was 99% chance it was surviving. It's CNC and it wasn't going anywhere. Some people ask about the weight. We did a lot of fine tuning on the weight on the first set of pipes, and we got the weight to where we were about the same as any of our competitors that were coming from China or Taiwan with the injection blown pipes. This pipe was slightly heavier than the first generation pipes, but that's because this was still in prototype. We were still looking at areas that we could cut a little bit more material out, but it really was a minute weight gain, enough so that the racers didn't even notice. Just if you put them on a scale, I forget what the weight was, but it was so minuscule that we didn't really worry about it when we took it to Fort Myers for the Winter Nats. But it was a great pipe, and hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.